Hello, family. Enjoy this great and beautiful moment with Afri Stories. Remember to hit the like button, subscribe, and comment. It means the world to us. Also, share this video with your friends and loved ones, and don't miss future videos from us. Sit back and relax as we dive into story. Zara stood in front of the antique mirror in her hotel suite, running her hand lightly over the bodice of her Italian silk wedding gown. The faint hum of classical music drifted in from the corridor, where guests were being escorted to the lakeside ceremony. White roses, flown in especially for the occasion, adorned every corner, and their subtle fragrance mixed with the evening air. This was supposed to be the perfect day, an elegant union of love and business, a celebration that had taken months to plan. She could almost see her reflection trembling. Her eyes darted to the engagement ring on her finger, a diamond that sparkled like sunlight on water. It felt heavier than usual. She couldn't quite place why her stomach clenched every time she thought of seeing Tarek at the altar. Butterflies, maybe, but these weren't a fluttery burst of excitement. They felt more like anxious knots. A soft knock came at the door. Keisha, her best friend, peeked in. "They're starting to seat the last guests, Zara. Are you ready?" Zara let out a breath. "I think so. How does everything look out there? Is Mr. Benson here?" Keisha gave a wry smile. "He's here, definitely making his presence known. Your father's with him, discussing potential mergers, or so I overheard. But you know these business titans. They'll talk shop anywhere." Zara's reflection stared back at her, lips pressed together in an uneasy line. "This wedding is more than just two people saying I do. It's a seal for my father's architectural firm to gain investments. And Tarek knows that. He's been so calm all week, like he's playing a chess game. Sometimes I wonder if it's me he truly loves, or my father's empire." Keisha crossed the room and gripped Zara's hand. "Don't get lost in those thoughts. He proposed to you, right? He put the ring on your finger, and he's meeting you at the altar. That means something." Zara nodded, forcing a small smile. "Yes, it does. And I do love him. Or at least, I think I do." Just then, there was another knock, a bit more timid. The door opened to reveal Malik, a quiet young man with kind eyes. He was dressed simply in a black suit and held a small earpiece radio in his hand. "Miss Zara, the wedding planner asked me to let you know we are ready whenever you are," he said, his voice gentle but firm. Zara had met Malik only a few days ago. He was supposedly just a driver for the event team, assigned to help shuttle family members and VIPs. Yet, something about his demeanor felt different. He had an air of calm that contrasted sharply with the wedding chaos. She nodded, and he left with a polite bow. The next few minutes passed in a blur. Mama Lady, Zara's grandmother, arrived with a wide grin, adjusting the fold of her granddaughter's gown and whispering old blessings from their family tradition. "You're radiant, my child. Never doubt your own heart." Then came the final check. The veil draped over Zara's face, the gentle hush in the corridor as the music changed from soft classical to the wedding march. Keisha gave her a reassuring squeeze on the shoulder. "Mama," Lady whispered prayer. Zara inhaled deeply. Showtime. She stepped out into the corridor, flanked by bridesmaids. The light from the tall windows illuminated the pearls on her dress. Down the hallway, the double doors of the lakeside lawn were open, revealing a sunset sky tinted with gold and pink. Rows of white chairs lined either side of a crimson carpet. At the end of the aisle was an elegant gazebo adorned with roses and twinkling candles. Zara approached the entrance, her heart pounding. She expected to see Tarek at the altar, dressed in his designer tuxedo, that confident smile of his beaming as she walked toward him. But he wasn't there. Instead, she saw only the officiant and some of the groomsmen shifting uneasily. Her heart skipped. Was he late? That was unlike him. Tarek was always punctual, obsessively so. She exchanged a quick look with Keisha, who frowned. The wedding planner, sweating through his collar, rushed up to Zara. He stepped away for a moment. Stepped away? Zara repeated, her voice echoing. The music continued. Guests were seated, turning to see the bride in all her splendor. The officiant cleared his throat, glancing around. An excruciating minute passed. Then another. A hush fell over the crowd, so quiet Zara could hear the chirping of nearby crickets. With each passing second, her stomach twisted tighter. She scanned the faces, as if Tarek might appear at any moment, walked briskly up the aisle, and apologized for some trivial delay, but there was no sign of him. She began to walk, more like glide, down the aisle, propelled by a dizzying mix of adrenaline and confusion. Her father, seated near Mr. Benson, shifted uncomfortably. Mr. Benson raised an eyebrow, clearly displeased. This wedding was more than personal happiness. It was a culmination of months of negotiations and business deals. Zara reached the gazebo steps. Still, Tarek was nowhere to be seen. The officiant coughed nervously. Cameras flashed. She felt her cheeks heat up. Her heart raced as she carefully lifted her veil. She didn't know what else to do. In a voice tight with fear, she asked, "Has anyone heard from Tarek?" A sea of blank faces greeted her. The only sound was the rustle of the lake breeze through the rose bouquets. Zara turned to the wedding planner again, her voice trembling now. "What do you mean he stepped away? Where did he go?" The planner, hand shaking with a clipboard, sputtered, I'm not sure. He said he had to check on something and left." Zara's phone suddenly felt like a lifeline. She pulled it from a hidden pocket in her gown. Her heart pounded as she swiped the screen. No messages, no missed calls, nothing. The hush among the guests transformed into hushed whispers. She caught fragments of their murmurs. "This is embarrassing. Did he get cold feet? And I heard something about a deal with the father's company." Zara's knees threatened to buckle. It felt as though she was watching a nightmare scene unfolding from outside her own body. She desperately searched the crowd for any sign of Tarek's tall frame, that confident stride, but it was as though he had vanished off the face of the earth. From a front row, Mama Lady mouthed the words, "Stay strong." And then, time seemed to slow. Zara stood, frozen, with all eyes on her. She sensed that in another few minutes, chaos would erupt. Her father's fury, Mr. Benson's scorn, paparazzi swirling with cameras. She couldn't stop the surge of panic in her chest. Somewhere to her left, near the side aisle, Malik stood quietly. His eyes were filled with concern, not pity. He was just a driver. Or so she'd been told. Yet his gaze offered more comfort than the sea of guests. Zara swallowed hard, fighting tears. In the swirling silence, with a dream wedding turning into a surreal disaster, she kept asking herself one question. Where is Tarek? For nearly 2 hours, Zara lingered in an empty bridal suite. The ceremony had been put on an unofficial pause, though many guests whispered it was a full-blown cancellation. She had peeled off her veil, an undone part of the gown, so she could breathe. Keisha was by her side, scanning social media and contacting everyone they could think of. Tarek's phone goes straight to voicemail, Keisha said, exasperated. I messaged him, texted him, called his friends, even scoured his Instagram. He's literally off the grid. Zara pressed a damp towel against her forehead. Her once perfect makeup was now streaked from her tears. She tried to focus on her breathing, slow and steady, but her thoughts were spinning in 1,000 directions. Why would he run? Was it second thoughts? Was it something more sinister? Then the door burst open, and in strode her father, face red with anger. "Zara," he said, voice trembling, "Mr. Benson is threatening to pull out of the deal. This whole arrangement, our family business, future developments, everything is at stake." Zara forced herself to stand. Her father's frustration was palpable, but behind it, she saw genuine worry. "Dad, I don't know what happened. Tarek didn't say anything to me. You know him. He wouldn't just vanish." Her father pursed his lips. "Clearly, I don't know him as well as I thought." "Neither do you." He paused, taking in Zara's tear-stained face. "Are you okay, sweetheart?" She swallowed hard. I don't know. I feel humiliated and confused. He's never done anything like this. He's always been so predictable, so polished and on time." Her father started pacing. "We can't let this fiasco ruin the entire event. Mr. Benson's personal assistant just told me he's considering pulling all future investments if this is how unprofessional We handle major life events. He thinks we allowed a runaway groom situation to overshadow a business alliance. Keisha rolled her eyes at the mention of Benson's complaints. That man is heartless. Zara's entire future just cracked, and all he can think about is his investment returns. Zara's father cast a sharp glance at Keisha, but didn't disagree. He turned back to Zara and said quietly, "We have 100 guests outside. The media is waiting like vultures. We need some sort of plan or at least a statement." A sudden knock interrupted them. Mama Lady stood at the threshold, her wise eyes reflecting both compassion and impatience. "Zara, child, come with me." Zara hesitated, then followed her grandmother into a smaller room off to the side. The walls were decorated with pastel paintings, soft lighting, and a single velvet couch. Mama Lady shut the door, then placed her hands gently on Zara's shoulders. "My dear, sometimes the gods block a path for a reason. You must not let shame or rage cloud your spirit. There's a bigger picture here." Zara's lip quivered. "Bigger than being abandoned on my wedding day?" Mama Lady nodded. "Yes, child, bigger. You might not see it now, but we must have faith that something is working in your favor, even if it looks like betrayal." Zara sank onto the couch, tears welling again. "What do I do, Grandma? Everyone's expecting me to fix this. I'm heartbroken and humiliated." Mama Lady's eyes twinkled with an odd certainty. "Consider all your options. Don't be hasty, but don't let others decide for you. Sometimes the right choice appears at the last moment." Just then, Keisha hurried in, phone pressed to her ear. She held it out to Zara. "It's the wedding planner. He's losing it. The guests are getting restless. Some are leaving, and Mr. Benson is fuming." Zara stood, took the phone. "Hello? Zara? Thank goodness. Look, I need instructions. Are we calling this off, rescheduling, or something else? The photography team is waiting. The band is still set up, and the caterers have another event tonight." The planner babbled. Zara opened her mouth to speak, but words failed her. She ended the call with a promise to update him soon and sank back down. She could feel everything crumbling. A moment later, a soft knock broke the silence once more. It was Malik, standing in the doorway, eyes cast down respectfully. "Pardon me," he said. "I was asked if Miss Zara needs anything. Water, perhaps? A moment's drive? Anything at all." Zara looked at him. Something about his presence was calming. The way he didn't stare too long or pity her. He was simply there, an anchor in a storm she couldn't control. She managed a small nod. "I'll be fine, Malik. Thank you." He nodded once and quietly left. Mama Lady spoke up again. "Time is ticking, child. Whatever you decide, do it for yourself, not for your father or Mr. Benson or anyone else. This is your life." With trembling hands, Zara smoothed her gown. "Call it off. That's the logical step, right?" Her voice was hollow. Keisha frowned. "Zara, there's no shame in calling it off. You can issue a statement that Tarek is missing, because he literally is. If some investors are angry, then so be it. They should at least understand you're not a magician." Zara stood up, pacing the small room. I know. But if I call it off, my father's business is jeopardized. And beyond that, I'll be the woman who got left at the altar. People will talk, whisper, judge. It feels like I'm damned if I do, damned if I don't." "Mama," Lady put a hand on Zara's shoulder. "What does your heart tell you?" Zara bit her lip, tears threatening to spill again. "My heart is broken," she said, voice trembling. "But we have a contract with sponsors, with the event organizers. The wedding is heavily publicized. If I don't do something, I'll be left with even more chaos." Her thoughts whirled, and she pictured the silent crowd, the heartbreak etched on her father's face, the sneer on Mr. Benson's lips. She envisioned tomorrow's headlines: "Runaway groom shocks high-profile wedding." And then, in a moment of desperate clarity, an idea struck her like lightning, wild, unthinkable. She pushed the thought away, but it kept returning. She swallowed, then turned to Keisha. What if I have a stand-in?" Keisha blinked. "A stand-in groom? You're joking." This isn't some movie set, Zara. Zara stared at the door through which Malik had just disappeared. It would be a symbolic gesture just to get through the ceremony. To show Mr. Benson and the world that I'm not falling apart, that my father's empire isn't going down in flames because of one man's disappearance. Keisha's eyes went wide. You mean you can't be serious? Who would even agree to that? Zara exhaled slowly, remembering how Malik had looked at her. Calm, attentive, respectful. Would he even consider it? The idea sounded ludicrous. But she couldn't deny it was the only option that would allow the day to proceed without a complete meltdown. Mama Lady's expression was unreadable. She didn't try to talk Zara out of it. Instead, she said softly, sometimes in the midst of chaos, destiny plants a seed. Zara's heartbeat thundered in her ears. She was about to make a choice that could change everything. Keisha, called the planner, stall everyone for a few more minutes. I need to talk to someone. Steeling herself, Zara left the small room and went to find the only person who seemed to have a steady, unshakable calm in the middle of her tempest, Malik. Zara found Malik standing near the caterer's van, away from the clusters of agitated guests. He was leaning against a vehicle, talking quietly with one of the staff members. A gentle breeze fluttered his collar. His eyes flicked up as she approached, and he quickly moved away from the group, giving her a discreet bow of his head. Miss Zara, is there something I can help you with? He asked politely, though he could see the turmoil etched on her face. Zara felt a sudden nervous energy in her stomach. She couldn't believe the question she was about to ask. She cleared her throat. Malik, I need to ask you something unorthodox, and I won't be offended if you say no. He looked at her with genuine concern, not a hint of judgment. Go on. She glanced around to make sure no one was eavesdropping, then lowered her voice. Tariq has disappeared. He left me standing at the altar. I'm sure you've heard by now. Malik nodded, his expression somber. I'm sorry. That must be devastating. It is, Zara said, swallowing hard. My father and Mr. Benson are about to blow this whole thing up. And I need to salvage some part of today's ceremony, at least for appearance's sake. She looked him in the eye. I want to ask you to stand in as a groom. Not for real, she added quickly. Just for show. So the cameras see me walking down the aisle, exchanging vows, something to keep my father's business allies appeased and keep me from utter humiliation. Then we'll deal with the legalities later. Malik stared at her, momentarily taken aback. His face showed no mockery, only quiet consideration. That's a heavy request, he said finally, his tone respectful. I know, Zara whispered. You're under no obligation to say yes. And I realize it sounds crazy, but I don't know what else to do. He looked at her for a long moment, and in that silence, Zara felt her heart pounding so loudly she thought he might hear it. Finally, he nodded once. If it helps you in this difficult moment, I'll do it. Zara exhaled in relief, tears threatening to spill again. Thank you, she murmured, placing a hand on his arm. We'll just walk through the ceremony. No real marriage certificate, just emotions. Within minutes, the wedding planner, frazzled, sweaty, but oddly relieved, outfitted Malik in one of Tariq's spare suits. It was a bit roomy in the shoulders, but they tailored it as best as they could in the limited time. Keisha helped pin a boutonniere on him, her eyes flicking between Zara and Malik with a mixture of skepticism and amusement. You're both insane, Keisha whispered. But I'll help because I can't watch Zara break into pieces. Mama Lady offered a small, cryptic smile. The path is never straight, child. She kissed Zara's cheek in blessing. Minutes later, the wedding music resumed. A ripple of whispered curiosity swept through the guests as they noticed a different man waiting at the altar. Zara's heart hammered against her ribcage as she made her second entrance down the aisle. This time, she walked alone, the train of her gown trailing behind her. Malik stood at the front, hands clasped, every bit the picture of calm. But Zara detected the slight tension in his jaw. She stepped up to the officiant, who looked confused but gamely continued. The hush in the crowd was eerie. Some recognized that the groom wasn't Tariq. Others stared, jaws dropped, at this unimaginable turn of events. Zara's father sat in the first row, face grim but showing no signs of interrupting. Mr. Benson wore a sour expression, arms crossed. They all were playing along, no doubt for the sake of saving face and finances. The officiant cleared his throat, voice a bit shaky. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here to join these two in holy matrimony. Zara felt her throat tighten. 1,000 emotions swirled. Sorrow, betrayal, relief that at least someone was there to catch her from public humiliation. She forced herself to stand tall, shoulders back. When it came time for the vows, the officiant looked at Zara expectantly. She swallowed, tears brimming. This is a performance, she told herself. Just get through it. I, Zara, take you, Malik, to be my husband. She faltered, voice cracking. For a moment, her eyes darted to the empty seat where Tarek should have been. Anger flared in her chest. She cleared her throat again and pressed on. To have and hold, from this day forward in sorrow and in joy, in adversity and in triumph. Her voice trembled throughout, but she managed to finish. Then it was Malik's turn. He gently took her hands in his. His voice was steady, surprisingly warm. I, Malik, take you, Zara, to be my wife, to stand beside you, to support you, and to respect you, for as long as this commitment shall last. There was a strange resonance in his words. Something about his tone made it sound less like a hoax and more like a sincere promise. Zara could sense the sincerity behind each syllable, and it rattled her. She had never expected to feel anything genuine in this bizarre farce. The officiant asked for the rings. Keisha hurried forward, producing the ring that Tarek had chosen. Zara's hands were trembling as she slipped it onto Malik's finger. When Malik slid the matching band onto hers, his touch was careful and tender, as though she were something fragile he didn't want to break. In that moment, Zara felt a ripple of conflicting emotions. A sudden warmth spread through her chest. It felt real, far more real than the forced smiles she'd exchanged with Tarek in the weeks leading up to the wedding. Cameras flashed, capturing the unexpected union. A smattering of applause spread hesitantly through the crowd, unsure how to respond. Zara cast a fleeting glance at her father. His face remained taut, but he nodded slightly, relieved that some semblance of a ceremony had taken place. The officiant pronounced them husband and wife, though Zara knew it wasn't legally binding. Still, she felt a flutter in her heart. She managed a small smile as Malik gently took her arm, leading her back up the aisle. The guests rose, whispering, some clearly scandalized, others leaning forward with curiosity. When they reached the end of the aisle, the wedding photographer stopped them for a photo. Zara turned to face Malik, her bridal gown rustling in the evening air. Their eyes locked. She leaned in, lips close to his ear, voice barely above a whisper. "Who are you, really?" she asked, her breath catching. Malik's gaze flickered with something unreadable before he responded softly. "I promise, I'll tell you." At that moment, the photographer captured the image. The bride leaning in, expressing a mix of relief, confusion, and something else. A single tear threatened to roll down Zara's cheek. Their first photo as husband and wife, albeit an impromptu one, looked more authentic than any pose shot with Tarek had ever felt. When the makeshift ceremony concluded, the guests filed into the reception hall under the twilight sky. The tension was thick enough to slice with a knife. The air buzzed with speculation. Was this some avant-garde wedding twist, or had there been a real scandal behind the scenes? Zara, still clad in her lavish gown, snuck away with Malik to a quieter suite on the second floor of the venue. The roar of conversation and clinking glasses from below became muffled as they ascended the grand staircase. She led him into a dimly lit lounge area lined with plush chairs, pulling the door shut behind them. She turned to face him, pressing her back against the door. Her mind whirled. She barely knew this man, yet she just shared wedding vows, albeit staged, in front of her entire social circle. Now she needed answers. Malik, sensing her urgency, removed the jacket that fit him only somewhat. He folded it over the back of a chair, then ran a hand over his short hair. "I'm sorry if this has caused you more confusion," he began gently, "but I did what you asked." Zara's eyes flashed. "I'm grateful you stepped in, but I can't shake the feeling there's more to you than just being some event driver." He hesitated, exhaling slowly. You're right. I'm not just a driver, though I've been helping the event team in that capacity. My family owns this venue. My father is the one who built it from the ground up years ago. When I came back from my service overseas, I needed a way to reacquaint myself with normal life. So I took smaller roles, helped out with events, learned the ropes. It's part of my healing process. Zara blinked. Your father owns this place? So you're not like staff? Malik offered a small smile. Technically, I'm also staff, but by choice, I want to keep a low profile. The wedding planner asked me to fill in driving duties because I know the ins and outs of the property. I'm a trained security specialist, too. But above all, I needed some distance from my old life after losing my brother in the war. His voice caught at the mention of his brother. Zara's rigid posture softened. Despite her own heartbreak, she recognized his pain was still raw. I'm sorry about your loss. He nodded, gazed distant. Thank you. I couldn't handle the business politics of the family for a while. So I stepped away from the boardroom, from the suits, from all of it. Working quietly here gave me space to breathe. Zara let that sink in. And now you've basically married me in front of hundreds of people. That's quite a leap from quietly staying in the background. Malik managed a tight laugh. You could say that, but I saw you in distress, and I wanted to help. No one deserves that kind of humiliation, especially on what's supposed to be the happiest day of their life. When you asked me, I just couldn't say no. Zara swallowed, her mind returning to the shock of the day. I'm still trying to process that Tarek is gone. He didn't even send a note, a text, nothing. I don't know if this is cold feet or something more nefarious. Malik's expression darkened slightly. I wish I could say I know what happened, but I have no clue where he went or why. All I know is that right now, there are a lot of questions swirling around, and you're stuck in the middle of it. Zara stepped away from the door, crossing the room to stand by a window that overlooked the lake. The moon's reflection shimmered on the water, and she could hear faint laughter from the reception below. Likely guests who had decided to salvage the evening with free champagne. She felt Malik come up beside her, his presence steady. She glanced at the wedding band on her finger. It felt wrong to be wearing it, but part of her was relieved she hadn't had to face a crowd of pitying stares alone. Finally, she turned to him. Thank you, she said softly. Not just for going along with this, but for being kind. His eyes flicked to hers. You're welcome. Are you going to be okay? Zara gave a shaky nod. I don't know. My father's furious. Mr. Benson's probably already drafting ways to penalize my family business. And I'm left with no groom. But at least the gossip will center around bizarre twist of the standing groom, rather than just me being ditched. For now. Suddenly, her phone buzzed. She looked at the screen. Her father. She sighed, stepping aside to answer. Yes. His strained voice crackled through. Zara, people are leaving. Some are demanding explanations. Mr. Benson wants a word with you. He's up in arms about the fraudulent display. She rubbed her temple. All right, Dad, I'll come down soon. Just stall them a bit more. She hung up and looked back at Malik. I guess there's no escaping the aftermath. But could I see you again, maybe after I deal with my father and Mr. Benson? I'd feel better knowing at least one person in that crowd has my back. Malik placed a reassuring hand on the door, ready to open it for her. I'm here, Zara. I'll be close by if you need me. They descended the staircase together. Tension coiled in the air. As they parted ways at the base of the stairs, Zara couldn't help but feel a strange pull in her chest, a sense of gratitude mixed with curiosity. Who would have thought that the quiet man behind the wheel was from a world of wealth and heartbreak, just like her? Zara spent the next hour navigating awkward conversations. Her father, red-faced, insisted on making a public statement that, due to unforeseen circumstances, the wedding had been slightly altered. Mr. Benson sneered, questioning Zara's stability and the readiness of her family for further business dealings. Some guests offered pitying looks. Others, especially the social media influencers, were gleefully capturing every snippet of drama. A trending hashtag was emerging online. Hashtag the stand-in groom. Sometime past midnight, the crowd finally dispersed. The fireworks meant to celebrate the wedding exploded in the sky above an empty lawn. Zara found herself standing on the veranda, shoulders slumped. Keisha approached, wrapping an arm around her. "You did it, girl. You survived the day from hell," she murmured. Zara gave a hollow laugh. "Barely. My father's furious. Mama Lady is cryptic as always, and Mr. Benson is threatening to pull out of every deal unless we rectify this debacle." Keisha rubbed her back soothingly. "We'll figure it out. What about Tarek? Any new messages?" Zara glanced at her phone. "Nothing." A wave of anger surged. "When I find him, if I find him, I'll demand some serious answers." Then her gaze drifted across the lawn to see Malik, standing by a fountain. The amber lights cast soft shadows on his figure. As though sensing her eyes, he turned, meeting her gaze. He gave a slight nod, a gentle invitation. Zara squeezed Keisha's hand. "I need to talk to someone." She made her way across the manicured grass, the train of her gown brushing dew-laden petals. Malik waited quietly, hands folded. "You holding up okay?" he asked. "I will," she said, exhaling. "I still need to figure out how to proceed after this fiasco, but I wanted to see you before the night ends." Malik studied her face. The music in the distance had quieted, and the only sound was the trickling of the fountain. "Take it one step at a time. Give yourself space to breathe." Zara nodded. She took a step closer, reaching out to rest her hand gently on his. "Thank you again. I don't know what happens next, but your kindness means more than you know." For a moment, neither spoke. They simply stood there, two strangers bound by circumstance, yet sharing a moment of understanding. The wedding day had ended in chaos, but a strange new chapter had quietly begun. 3 days later, Zara sat at the edge of her bed in her downtown apartment, the wedding gown stuffed unceremoniously into a garment bag that hung from her closet door. She hadn't been able to bring herself to return it or even look at it. The only thing that gave her a sliver of focus was a detective-like mission she had embarked on, finding Tarek and uncovering why he vanished. Her phone lit up with a notification. It was Keisha calling for the 5th time that day. Zara answered with a tired sigh. "Anything new?" Keisha's voice came out excited. "You're not going to believe this, but I found some documents." I reached out to an old contact of mine, a journalist who had done a piece on identity theft in high-profile circles. Turns out, Tarek might not be Tarek. Zara's hand tightened around the phone. "What do you mean?" "He has multiple aliases. He's been linked to suspicious transactions, shell companies." "Zara, I hate to say it, but I think he was using your father's firm as part of a scam, possibly funneling money to offshore accounts." Zara's mind reeled. She suspected something deeper was at play, but hearing it put so bluntly twisted her stomach. "So, he was never serious about me? He just wanted to worm his way into my father's finances." Keisha's voice softened. "I'm sorry, Z. It looks that way. I also found someone claiming to be Tarek's brother. Real name, Jamal, trying to get in touch with you. He left me a cryptic voicemail. He's done it before in Dubai. You aren't the first." Zara felt the blood drain from her face. She clutched the phone so hard her knuckles whitened. Rage, heartbreak, disbelief, everything churned inside her. I can't believe I almost married a con artist. No, I did marry him, or, well, tried to. Z, you've got to keep your head clear. You might also be in danger if he feels threatened. You need to be careful." Zara shuddered. "Okay, I'll update my father. See if we can freeze any transactions that Tarek initiated. Thanks, Keisha. Keep me posted." She ended the call, her heart pounding. Grabbing her laptop, she pulled up the financial dashboard of her father's firm. She had limited access due to her position as an architect there. To her horror, she spotted multiple large transfers pending authorization. They had been initiated under Tarek's login credentials, but flagged for final sign-off. If the wedding had gone through as planned, those might have been cleared with added marital privileges. Zara nearly collapsed with relief that the wedding fiasco had happened before these transactions could be completed. Mama Lady's words were right. she thought in a daze. Sometimes the gods block a path for a reason. An hour later, Zara stepped into her father's study. He sat at his desk, eyes rimmed with exhaustion, going through piles of paperwork. "Dad," she said softly, "I have news." He looked up. "About Tarek?" She laid out what she had found. The suspicious accounts, the aliases, the near-executed transfers. As she spoke, her father's shoulders sagged, as if a weight he'd been half suspecting suddenly dropped. "I should have done a deeper background check," he muttered, rubbing his temples. Benson insisted that Tarek was a good match, though. Said he was from a respected circle. Now I see we were all duped. Zara felt a fresh wave of anger and humiliation. All those tender moments with Tarek, the whispered promises, were they all carefully crafted lies? Her father exhaled sharply. "We need to protect the firm. I'll call the banks, freeze those transactions, and loop in legal. What about you? Are you okay?" She shook her head, eyes shining with tears she refused to let fall. "I'm not sure, but I'm not letting this break me. I'm going to fight back." He stood and drew her into a rare hug. "We'll get through this, Zara." That evening, after a day of damage control, Zara found herself thinking about Malik. In the chaos of the last 3 days, he'd texted her once to check on her well-being, but she'd been too consumed to respond at length. Now, she realized he was the one person who'd shown her genuine kindness in the midst of betrayal. She dialed his number. He picked up on the second ring, voice calm and pleasant. "Hello, it's Zara," she said softly. I just found out a lot of disturbing information about Tarek. I could use someone to talk to." Malik's tone grew serious. "I'm here. Where are you?" They agreed to meet at the very lakeside spot where the wedding ceremony had taken place. By night, the venue was quiet except for a couple of staff packing up chairs and tables. The stage where she had almost exchanged vows with Tarek was dismantled, leaving only a flat, empty stretch of lawn. Malik stood by the water, hands in his jacket pockets, looking out at the moonlit ripples. Zara approached hesitantly, arms wrapped around herself. She explained everything. The stolen identity, the attempted funneling of funds, Jamal's message. As she spoke, Malik listened intently, eyes never leaving her face. "You must be reeling," he said softly when she finished. She nodded. "I'm angry, embarrassed. But mostly, I feel relieved he's gone before he could do any more damage. And guilty that I didn't see the signs." Malik shook his head. "Con artists are skilled at manipulation. Don't blame yourself for being genuinely trusting." Zara glanced at the calm water. "Still, I let him get too close. To my heart and to my family's business." Malik exhaled. "The important thing is you caught it in time. Now you can start picking up the pieces." They stood there in silence for a moment, the distant chirping of crickets filling the warm night air. Then Zara turned to him, a hint of a smile creeping onto her face despite everything. "I watched the wedding video. From the day you stepped in, I could see how nervous you were, yet you still tried to make me feel safe." Malik laughed softly, a sound of mild embarrassment. "I was definitely nervous. That was a first for me, getting married on a whim." She chuckled for the first time in days. "What would your father say if he found out?" Malik shrugged. He'd probably raise an eyebrow, then smile and say, "At least you help someone in need." "My family is big on doing the right thing, even if it's complicated." Zara felt a weight lift from her chest. She realized that, in contrast to Tarek's slick persona, Malik's quiet honesty was what she truly needed. No games, no illusions, just realness. As the night deepened, Zara and Malik continued talking. She told him about her architectural aspirations, how she wanted to design sustainable buildings that blended seamlessly with nature. He listened, genuinely interested, occasionally chiming in with a thought or question about her passions. She, in turn, learned a bit more about his experiences in the military, the loss of his brother, and why he'd chosen to step away from wealth and prestige for a simpler path. Their conversation flowed easily, as though they were old friends finally catching up. By the time she looked at her phone, it was well past midnight. Malik walked her to her car, lingering by the door. "Keep me updated on everything with Tarek's case." If you need any security or protective measures, let me know. Zara smiled at him, a genuine warmth behind her eyes. I will. Thank you for being here. He nodded. Get some rest, Zara. You've had enough turmoil for a lifetime. As she drove away, Zara realized her heart felt lighter. The sting of betrayal was still there, but a new sense of hope glimmered at the edges of her bruised emotions. Even though her groom had vanished without a trace, maybe, just maybe, fate had led her to someone far more real. A week passed. In that time, Zara's father managed to freeze all of Tarek's attempted transactions. Mr. Benson, initially furious, softened once he realized that Zara's quick actions had prevented a major financial catastrophe. He begrudgingly kept the business partnership alive, muttering apologies about having trusted Tarek's false background. Meanwhile, Jamal, Tarek's brother, finally succeeded in contacting Zara directly. They met in a busy cafe downtown, where Jamal laid out even more details of Tarek's deceptions. He showed her records of past scams, including one in Dubai that had led to an international arrest warrant. Tarek had been evading law enforcement for years, building false identities, and latching onto wealthy individuals to funnel money into offshore accounts. Zara's near marriage was simply the latest chapter in his con. Sitting there, sipping a lukewarm latte, Zara felt both fury and a strange relief. She wasn't alone in having been duped, yet it made the betrayal no less painful. As Jamal apologized repeatedly for his brother's actions, she found herself strangely calm. I appreciate your honesty, Zara told him, her voice measured. But I also need to move on. I won't let Tarek's actions define me. Jamal nodded, relief evident on his face. I'm working with authorities. If he tries to come back or withdraw funds, they'll catch him. I just wanted you to know you're not to blame for any of this. After he left, Zara sat in the cafe, letting the hum of conversations and coffee machines wash over her. Her phone buzzed. A new text message from Malik. How'd the meeting go? She typed back, it went okay. Thanks for checking in. He replied almost instantly. You free to talk in person? I'm at the lake. She hesitated only a moment before standing, grabbing her purse, and heading out the door. When Zara arrived at the lake, she found Malik waiting by the shore, a small wooden dock extending out onto the water. A gentle breeze rustled the tall grasses along the banks. The sky was a brilliant wash of pink and orange as the sun set. Malik turned, his face lighting up with a warm smile as she approached. How are you holding up? She sat next to him on the edge of the dock, letting her feet dangle. Better than I expected. Tarek's brother confirmed everything we suspected. It hurts to know how deep the lies went, but at least I'm not in the dark anymore. Malik nodded. Truth can be harsh, but it's the first step in moving forward. They fell into a comfortable silence, watching the ripples on the water. After a while, Zara sighed, twisting the ring still on her finger. She looked down at the simple band, not the one Tarek gave her, but the one Malik had slipped on during the impromptu ceremony. She'd worn it almost absent-mindedly, unsure why she hadn't taken it off. She pulled it off now, holding it in her palm. I want to give this back to you, she said softly, extending her hand toward Malik. It doesn't feel right to keep wearing it. Our wedding wasn't real. Malik studied the ring resting on her palm, but made no move to take it. I understand, he said quietly, but maybe there's more to it now. Symbolism, at least. You needed a lifeline at a critical moment, and I happened to be there. Zara looked at him, her gaze steady. And you were amazing. But we both know I can't keep pretending to be married to someone I barely know. He nodded, a hint of sadness in his eyes. Right. So what now? She looked at the band for a long moment, turning it over in her fingers. Then she closed her fist around it. What if we start over? Malik blinked. Start over? Zara took a breath. Yes, as ourselves. No wedding dress, no crowd, no business deals. Just you and me getting to know each other, if that's something you'd want. The corner of Malik's mouth curved into a smile. Zara, I'd be honored to get to know you, properly. She felt her heart flutter, a lightness she hadn't experienced in years. Then let's do it. A clean slate. Gently. She held the ring out to him. "I'm giving this back, and I suggest we only put on again if one day we both mean it." Malik's eyes flicked between her face and the ring. Slowly, he closed her fingers around the band again, warmth emanating from his touch. "Keep it for now," he said, voice soft, as a reminder that sometimes life throws us curveballs that lead us to unexpected places. Zara's throat tightened with emotion. She slipped the ring into her pocket, then turned her gaze to the vibrant sunset. For the first time, she felt a sense of hope about whatever might come next. Later that night, they shared a stroll around the lake's perimeter. The sky shifted from pink-orange to deep purple, and the first stars began to appear. They talked about the mundane, favorite foods, childhood memories, and about the profound, Malik's military tours, Zara's dreams of opening a design firm that specialized in eco-friendly architecture. Each step seemed to bridge the gap between their once separate worlds. When they finally returned to the spot where they'd started, a hush fell over them. The lights along the shoreline glimmered, reflecting off the water. Zara turned to Malik, her pulse speeding up ever so slightly. "Thank you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know how I would have survived the humiliation of that day if you hadn't stepped in." He reached out, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face. "You would have survived regardless, Zara. You're strong, but I'm glad I could help." Impulsively, she leaned in and rested her head against his shoulder, exhaling a soft sigh. He wrapped an arm around her, the gesture comforting and genuine. They stood like that for a few moments. Neither wanted to break the spell. The day Targ disappeared had shattered Zara's faith in love and trust, but somehow, in the midst of all the chaos, she had discovered something unexpectedly real. A gentle breeze carried the scent of fresh water and night-blooming flowers. In that serene bubble, Zara let herself imagine a future untainted by betrayal. Not a perfect future. Perfect was an illusion, after all, but a future built on honesty, mutual respect, and genuine connection. A week later, the venue staff finished clearing out the last remnants of Zara's ill-fated wedding. No more rows of chairs, no more grand gazebo. In its place, however, a smaller, simpler setup had been erected for an intimate gathering. Nothing official, just a dinner between close friends and family. Mama Lady, wearing her vibrant traditional dress, oversaw the arrangements, offering directions and peppering the staff with her trademark wise sayings. She glanced at Zara, who was sitting at a nearby table drafting a new design on her sketch pad. "Child, you look lighter," Mama Lady observed with a knowing smile. Zara paused, setting her pencil down. "I am. In a strange way, that day saved me. If Tarek hadn't disappeared, I might never have known about his deceit until it was too late." Mama Lady nodded sagely. "The gods have their way of protecting us. Sometimes it's painful, but it's necessary." A soft commotion near the entrance drew Zara's attention. Malik entered, wearing casual slacks and a button-down shirt, greeting her father politely, shaking hands with a few new faces. He spotted Zara and smiled, making his way over. "How's the new design coming?" he asked, gesturing to her sketch pad. She shrugged, beaming up at him. "It's a concept for a pavilion that integrates with the lake's ecosystem. I want to propose it to the venue's owners. If they're interested," she added playfully, arching an eyebrow. Malik chuckled, catching the hint. "Well, I might have some influence with them, but I can't make any promises," he said, an amused twinkle in his eye. Zara rose from her seat, and they walked outside to the deck where a small group had gathered for dinner. Keisha was already there, chatting up Mr. Benson, who seemed far more relaxed now that the crisis had subsided. Zara's father offered Malik a respectful nod, as if accepting him as a fixture in Zara's life. When dinner was served, everyone found their seats around a large round table overlooking the placid lake. The sun had just dipped below the horizon, leaving a soft glow in the sky. Laughter and conversation flowed easily. It felt worlds away from the tense, dramatic scene of just over a week ago. Mama Lady stood up at one point, tapping a fork against her glass to get everyone's attention. The chatter hushed, and all eyes turned to her. "I want to say a few words," she began, her voice carrying both warmth and authority. "We gather here not for a grand wedding or a business merger, but for something simpler and perhaps more important. gratitude. Her gaze swept the table, landing on Zara, then on Malik. We are grateful that truth has come to light, that hearts are healing, and that new paths have opened. What was meant for harm has turned into a blessing. Zara felt tears prick at her eyes. The entire table lifted their glasses in unspoken agreement. She glanced at Malik, who nodded subtly, his eyes reflecting the same sentiment. As the group resumed their meal, Zara turned to Malik and, under the table, briefly entwined her fingers with his. He squeezed back gently, a quiet promise between them. Long after dinner ended and guests departed, Zara and Malik lingered by the lake's edge, bathed in moonlight. A gentle wind ruffled the surface of the water. The scent of water lilies and night air enveloped them. And for a moment, Zara's mind flickered back to the chaos of her aborted wedding day. It felt like a lifetime ago. She reached into her purse and pulled out the ring he had placed on her finger during that surreal ceremony. Holding it between them, she asked softly, "This ring, do you still want me to keep it?" Malik studied it, then met her eyes. "Only if it's a symbol of our new beginning, not of the past fiasco." Zara considered his words, then slowly placed the ring back in her purse. "I'll hold on to it. For the future, whatever that might look like." They stood in silence, the gentle lap of the lake's waters the only soundtrack to the night. After a moment, Malik turned to Zara, a question in his eyes. "I know we said we wanted a fresh start, but can I ask if you thought about the next step for us?" She gave a soft laugh. "Honestly, I'm taking it day by day. But I like spending time with you, talking to you, sharing ambitions and worries. That's enough for me right now." Malik nodded, slipping an arm around her shoulders. "It's enough for me, too. They say the truest things in life happen when we least expect them." Zara's groom had disappeared without a trace, leaving behind betrayal, confusion, and heartbreak. Yet that same disappearance unveiled a shocking truth about the man she thought she loved, and introduced her to someone far more authentic. Now, standing side by side in the moonlit embrace of the lake, Zara and Malik felt the quiet stirrings of something real. Not forced by business deals, not orchestrated by a wedding planner, but born out of mutual respect, kindness, and genuine understanding. As they walked away from the water's edge, hand in hand, a single question lingered in the air, one that Zara herself had once whispered, almost in disbelief. Would you marry a stranger if fate left you no choice? In her case, that impulsive decision to marry a stranger had ironically saved her from the greatest mistake of her life. Now, she had the chance to build something genuine, free from deception. And maybe, just maybe, one day, she would walk down the aisle again, this time with someone who, when he said, "I do," truly meant it. Until then, their story was just beginning, an honest, uncharted journey that neither of them had planned, but both of them chose to embrace. The end. Enjoyed the story? We invite you to give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Your support motivates us to keep bringing more beautiful stories almost every day. We are very grateful for your effort. See you again.